What kind of woman walks through a Montana blizzard at midnight and knocks on a stranger's door without saying a single word? Grant McCoy asked himself that the moment he heard the sound. 3 slow knocks, each one heavy, tired, as if the person on the other side was fighting for every breath. He froze at his workbench, needle locked mid-stitch as the winter wind screamed around the cabin. He wasn't expecting anyone. No one came this deep into the pines, unless they meant trouble. Outlaws, drifters, desperate men running from something worse than the cold. Grant's hand drifted toward the rifle resting against the wall. Then the knock came again, weaker this time. He set the leather harness aside and stood. The floorboards creaked under his boots as he crossed the small room. Above him in the loft, his children slept. Tommy, 7 years old, curled around the wooden horse Grant had carved. Lillian, just 5, her tiny hand clutching the edge of her quilt. They trusted him to keep them safe. Grant breathed slow, braced himself, and pulled the door open. What kind of woman walks through a Montana blizzard at midnight and knocks on a stranger's door without saying a single word? Grant McCoy asked himself that the moment he heard the sound. A woman stood on the threshold. Snow clung to her shawl, her hair, her eyelashes. Her face was thin, her cheeks hollow, and her lips trembling from the cold. But it was her eyes that stopped him cold. They were pale and milky, staring past him into the dark room. Unseeing, blind. She swayed like her knees were about to give out. Her hands trembled as she lifted them slightly, empty palms open, as if asking for permission simply to keep standing. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Hunger and exhaustion hung on her like a shadow. Grant's chest tightened. He knew hardship. He'd lived it. But this woman looked like she had walked through the edge of the world and barely made it back. "Sit down, ma'am," Grant said quietly. "Supper's ready." He stepped back, holding the door open. She didn't move at first. Her head tilted as if she was listening for danger, testing his intention. What kind of woman walks through a Montana blizzard at midnight and knocks on a stranger's door without saying a single word? Grant McCoy asked himself that the moment he heard the sound. Then she reached out, fingertips brushing the doorframe, and stepped inside. Grant guided her to the table, pulled out a chair, and helped her sit. The stew pot still hung above the dying coals. He always kept something warm at night. Habit from when his wife was alive, when the children used to wake hungry. He ladled a full bowl of stew and set it in front of the stranger. Steam rose into her face. Her hands shook as she lifted the spoon. The first bite hit her like a revelation. Tears spilled silently down her cheeks as she ate, slow and careful. Her body trembled with every swallow, as if she had gone too long without food, and her soul didn't know how to accept kindness anymore. Grant didn't speak, didn't ask questions. Out here, a person's past was their own, unless they chose to tell it. When the bowl was empty, she set the spoon down with gentle care, as if afraid it might break. What kind of woman walks through a Montana blizzard at midnight and knocks on a stranger's door without saying a single word? Grant McCoy asked himself that the moment he heard the sound. Her lips moved, her voice barely a whisper. "God bless you!" Then her head dipped forward. She didn't fall from the chair so much as fold into sleep. Complete, deep, helpless sleep. Grant caught her before she slid to the floor. He grabbed his own blanket from the bed and wrapped it around her shoulders. She didn't stir. He eased her down beside the fire, placing her head on a rolled coat. Only then did he look closely at her hands. Scars ran across her palms, old burns, twisted cuts, healed unevenly, the kind that came from hard labor and harder times. She had lived through something awful. Grant stared at her for a long time. The storm rattled the windows, the fire crackled low. And for the first time in 2 years, he felt something warm break through the frost inside him. Morning arrived, pale and cold. Light filtered through the cabin window in thin bands. What kind of woman walks through a Montana blizzard at midnight and knocks on a stranger's door without saying a single word? Grant McCoy asked himself that the moment he heard the sound. Grant woke stiff in his chair, rifle still across his lap, The fire had burned to ash. The woman was gone. He shot to his feet, heart pounding. Then he heard it. The creak of the well handle outside. He stepped to the window. There she was, wrapped in her shawl, washing her face and hands in the freezing morning water. Blind, but moving with purpose. She counted her steps, tested the ground with her foot before committing her weight. Behind him, the loft ladder creaked. "Pa," Tommy whispered. "Who's that?" "A traveler," Grant said. She needed help. Tommy climbed down and went to the window. Lillian appeared behind him, clutching her rag doll. Both children watched the stranger with wide eyes. "Is she staying?" Lillian asked. "I don't know," Grant said softly, and he meant it. The cabin door opened. Cold air rushed in as the woman stepped inside and closed it behind her. What kind of woman walks through a Montana blizzard at midnight and knocks on a stranger's door without saying a single word? Grant McCoy asked himself that the moment he heard the sound, her head tilted slightly, listening. "Morning," Grant said. "Morning." Her voice was soft and cautious. "I didn't mean to intrude. I'll be on my way as soon as—" "You'll do no such thing," Grant said gently. "Storms passed, but the roads are buried. You'd freeze before you reach the creek." She stood still, her jaw tightened. Pride or fear, he couldn't tell. "I ain't Charity," she said. "My name's Grant McCoy," he replied. "These are my children, Tommy and Lillian. You can work if that makes it easier. I'm short on hands. Cabin needs mending." She breathed slowly, steadying herself. "I can mend," she said. "Cook. Tend animals. If you guide me first." "Fair enough." Grant picked up a torn shirt from the basket by the hearth. He placed it in her hands. "Start with this." Her fingers traced the fabric, finding the tear by touch alone. What kind of woman walks through a Montana blizzard at midnight and knocks on a stranger's door without saying a single word? Grant McCoy asked himself that the moment he heard the sound. She reached into the pouch at her belt and pulled out her own needle and thread. Then she began to stitch. Her movements were smooth and precise. Every stitch perfect. Tommy crept closer. "How do you do that without seeing?" "I look with my hands," she said, smiling faintly. "And with my ears, and with what I remember." Grant watched her. Something quiet and powerful moved through the cabin, something he hadn't felt since Sarah died. Hope. What kind of town sees a blind, hungry woman working beside a widowed father and decides that must be a problem? Grant learned the answer 3 days later, but the trouble had started long before that moment. Those first days passed like slow-moving water, steady and quiet. Nora learned the shape of the cabin by touch and memory. She counted every step. She traced corners with her fingertips. What kind of woman walks through a Montana blizzard at midnight and knocks on a stranger's door without saying a single word? Grant McCoy asked himself that the moment he heard the sound. She listened for Tommy's footsteps, for Lillian's little hum when she played with her dolls, for the sound of Grant's boots moving across the floor. She worked with calm determination, the kind that grows inside a person who has lived through hardship and refuses to quit. She never asked for pity. She never complained. She simply did the work. She tied a guide rope from the door to the woodpile and hung laundry with perfect knots. She cooked by smell and touch, made bread that filled the house with warm scent, swept the floors, and stitched clothing with more skill than anyone Grant had ever known. Tommy followed her everywhere, asking questions. Lillian held her hand often, careful not to pull too fast. Grant watched all of it with a quiet awe he could not admit out loud. At night, when the children slept, Nora would light a small candle from her pouch. What kind of woman walks through a Montana blizzard at midnight and knocks on a stranger's door without saying a single word? Grant McCoy asked himself that the moment he heard the sound. She whispered a name into the flame, but Grant could never hear it fully. A prayer, maybe, a memory, a loss. On the third afternoon, Grant stood in the doorway, watching Nora teach Lillian how to work the spinning wheel. The girl's hands rested on Nora's, mimicking her movements. Sunlight streamed through the window and touched Nora's hair, turning it soft gold for a moment. The sight hit Grant in the chest. Not because she looked like Sarah. She didn't. But the feeling she brought into the room, warmth, steadiness, quiet hope, felt familiar. It felt like something he had lost and never expected to feel again. "Mr. McCoy," Nora said gently. Grant blinked, startled. "What is it?" Quote, "You went quiet," she said. "You all right?" He swallowed. "Fine." She tilted her head. She didn't believe him, but she let it rest. That evening, hooves beat rhythm across the ground outside. What kind of woman walks through a Montana blizzard at midnight and knocks on a stranger's door without saying a single word? Grant McCoy asked himself that the moment he heard the sound. Grant stepped onto the porch, rifle in hand. A rider approached. Warren Kent, the banker and landowner with a face like carved stone. Tall, gray-haired, cold eyes. "McCoy," Warren said. "Evening." Kent, "Heard you picked up a visitor." Grant didn't like his tone. "That's right." Warren's eyes drifted toward the window where Nora's shadow moved near the table. "Town's got questions," he said. "Town can keep its questions." Warren's jaw tightened. "A blind woman living under your roof. You're a widower." "People will talk." "People always do," Grant said. "Doesn't make it truth." Warren leaned forward in the saddle. "You're making a mistake." "Maybe, but it's mine to make." They stared at each other, breath fogging in the cold air. Warren finally pulled on the reins. "Judge a man by the company he keeps, McCoy." He rode off, leaving tension in the air like gun smoke. What kind of woman walks through a Montana blizzard at midnight and knocks on a stranger's door without saying a single word? Grant McCoy asked himself that the moment he heard the sound. Grant stepped back inside. Nora sat by the fire with the Bible in her lap. Her fingers traced the raised letters on the cover. "Trouble?" she asked. "Nothing I can't handle." She considered him for a long moment. Then she said something he didn't expect at all. "Would you like me to read it to you?" Grant stiffened. His chest tightened. The memory of Sarah, lying in their bed, asking him to read Psalm 23 before she passed, flickered like a ghost. He had held the Bible then, staring at the words, unable to read them aloud. The guilt had never left. Nora sensed the silence. "I can read if you'd like," she whispered. "Only if it helps you." His voice barely came out. "Please." She opened the book, found the page with her fingertips, and read softly, calmly, steadily. The words Sarah had loved filled the cabin. Grant bowed his head and listened. What kind of woman walks through a Montana blizzard at midnight and knocks on a stranger's door without saying a single word? Grant McCoy asked himself that the moment he heard the sound. Something inside him finally loosened. When she finished, she closed the book gently. "Thank you," he whispered. "Any time," she said. Spring crept in slow. Snow melted into cold mud. Grass pushed through the earth in thin green lines. Grant went out to hitch the plow. Nora stepped outside beside him. "I can help," she said. "You'll break your back," he told her. "Then I'll break it honest." He tore an old rope into long sections and tied a guideline down each furrow. Nora walked behind him, one hand on the rope, scattering seed from a small sack. She slipped once, regained her balance, then kept going. Stubborn, determined, fierce. Grant watched her with a tightness in his chest he didn't have a name for. That night, neighbors passed by on their way to town. They stared openly, slowing their wagons. Some waved. Some whispered. Grant felt their eyes like needles. Nora felt it too. What kind of woman walks through a Montana blizzard at midnight and knocks on a stranger's door without saying a single word? Grant McCoy asked himself that the moment he heard the sound. She stood a little straighter. At supper, Grant tried reading the Bible. His finger traced each letter as Nora had taught him. He read slowly, stumbling through the words. But by the end of the verse, pride flickered in his voice. "You did well," Nora said, smiling. The children clapped. Later that night, while they washed dishes, Grant's hand brushed Nora's under the warm water. Both froze. The air thickened around them. "Sorry," he said quickly. "Don't be," Nora whispered. Neither moved closer, neither pulled away. The next morning was Sunday. Church day. Grant hitched the wagon, helped the children in. Nora hesitated at the cabin door. "You don't have to go," Grant said gently. "Yes," she replied. "I do. If I'm staying, I need to face them." The church stood at the edge of town, white boards, crooked steeple, rattling windows. What kind of woman walks through a Montana blizzard at midnight and knocks on a stranger's door without saying a single word? Grant McCoy asked himself that the moment he heard the sound. When Grant's wagon rolled up, silence swept over the crowd like cold wind. People stared. Grant helped Nora down. She took his arm, chin lifted, refusing to shrink back. The children flanked her like small guards. Inside, every whisper hit like a slap. Every turned head, every tightened mouth, every judge's look. The preacher stumbled through his prayer. The service ended with icy silence. No one spoke to them. Not one person. On the ride home, Lillian asked, "Why were they mean?" "People fear what they don't understand," Nora said gently. "It's easier to be cruel than curious." That afternoon, rain hammered the roof. Thunder rolled across the valley. Grant and Nora sat at the table, the fire casting soft light around them. "I should leave," Nora said quietly. "No. I'm causing trouble." "You're giving my children hope," Grant said fiercely. "You think I care what Warren Kent thinks? What kind of woman walks through a Montana blizzard at midnight and knocks on a stranger's door without saying a single word?" Grant McCoy asked himself that the moment he heard the sound. Nora's hands trembled. "Everyone I love dies or leaves. Maybe I'm cursed." Grant reached across the table and covered her hands with his. "Then maybe it's time someone stayed." Nora's eyes glistened. She didn't pull away. But the storm outside wasn't the danger. The real one was hours away. 1 week later, the town called a meeting. Warren Kent stood at the front of the hall, face hard as iron. "McCoy," he said, "you'll answer for this." Grant didn't want to go, Nora insisted. "They're judging me," she said, "so I'll look them in the face." The hall was packed. Lanterns cast long shadows. Voices buzzed. Warren began. "A blind woman living with a widower. This ain't proper." Murders rippled. "She can't care for herself. She's a burden. She's dangerous." Grant's fists clenched. "I gave her food and work," he said, "same as anyone would." "And what does she give you? What kind of woman walks through a Montana blizzard at midnight and knocks on a stranger's door without saying a single word?" Grant McCoy asked himself that the moment he heard the sound. A woman called sharply. Nora rose slowly, her chin lifted. "I give my labor, I mend, I cook, I teach his children, I ask nothing. If that offends you, the fault isn't mine." Her voice shook the room. But Warren slammed his fist on the podium. "Send her away, McCoy, or lose everything." Jed Murphy, Grant's oldest friend, stood. Grant felt his heart drop. "Warren's right," Jed said quietly. "Grant, I'm asking as your friend, let her go." Betrayal cracked the ground beneath Grant's feet. He looked at Nora. Her face held steady, but her hands shook. "I'll think on it," Grant said. The words tasted bitter. The crowd broke apart. Grant and Nora walked home in silence. At the cabin, Nora packed her few belongings, her candle, her needle and thread. She faced him with a soft, broken smile. "I won't be the reason you lose everything." "Nora?" "It's all right, Grant." But it wasn't. What kind of woman walks through a Montana blizzard at midnight and knocks on a stranger's door without saying a single word? Grant McCoy asked himself that the moment he heard the sound. And the next morning she walked away through the trees. Tommy cried. Lillian sobbed. Grant stood on the porch watching the only warmth he'd felt in years disappear into the cold woods. His heart went with her. What kind of man sends away the only light his home has known in years and thinks he can live with it? Grant McCoy learned the truth in 7 long, empty days. The cabin felt lifeless without Nora. The children barely spoke. Tommy sat with his primer open but didn't read. Lillian carried her rag doll everywhere, asking every night, "When's Miss Nora coming back?" Grant had no answer. He tried burying himself in work, chopping wood until his hands split, plowing fields until his back screamed, mending fences until dark swallowed the sky. But nothing drowned the hollow feeling inside him. On the 8th day, Grant saddled his horse and rode to Sarah's grave. What kind of woman walks through a Montana blizzard at midnight and knocks on a stranger's door without saying a single word? Grant McCoy asked himself that the moment he heard the sound. The hillside looked over the whole valley, wildflowers just beginning to push through the earth. Sarah's headstone was simple, carved by Grant himself, with clumsy hands the winter she died. Sarah McCoy, it read, beloved wife and mother. Grant knelt, head bowed. I failed you, he whispered. I couldn't read you the words you wanted, couldn't save you. And now I failed her too. The wind moved gently through the grass like a sigh. I was afraid, he said, afraid of losing again, afraid of looking weak, afraid of this whole damned town. He pressed a hand to the cold stone. I'm sorry, for all of it. A voice behind him cut the quiet. Talking to ghosts, Grant? He turned. Martha Doyle stood there, shawl wrapped tight around her shoulders, eyes steady and sharp. She's gone, Grant said. I know, Martha replied, saw her leaving. You're a damn fool, Grant McCoy. What kind of woman walks through a Montana blizzard at midnight and knocks on a stranger's door without saying a single word? Grant McCoy asked himself that the moment he heard the sound. Grant swallowed hard. That woman taught your boy to read better than any school in this town. Martha continued, made your daughter laugh again. She gave you something you thought you'd buried with Sarah. Her voice softened. And you let Warren Kent run her out of here? Grant felt the truth hit him like a hammer. Where'd she go? He asked. North, Martha said, toward the line shacks. But she won't last long alone. Grant stood, his legs shook. I'll find her. It's about time, Martha said. He rode home fast, threw supplies into saddlebags, and met the children on the porch. Their eyes red, hope flickering. You bringing her back, Pa? Tommy asked. Grant nodded once. Yes. Good, Lillian whispered. We miss her. So do I, he said. Then he rode hard into the mountains. The search took 2 days. The trails were steep, hidden under fallen branches. What kind of woman walks through a Montana blizzard at midnight and knocks on a stranger's door without saying a single word? Grant McCoy asked himself that the moment he heard the sound. The wind cut like a knife. Grant called Nora's name until his throat burned. He found bits of thread caught on bushes, a broken walking stick, a footprint in soft mud. Faint signs, but they kept him moving. On the second evening, he spotted a thin line of smoke curling from an old line shack. Barely a shelter, half-collapsed roof, cold wind blowing through the cracks. Grant dismounted and pushed the door open. Nora lay on the wooden floor, wrapped in her shawl, shaking with fever. Her skin burned under his touch. Nora, he whispered, dropping to his knees. It's me. Her eyes fluttered open. She tried to lift her hand. Grant, she breathed. I'm here. I've got you. You came back. I never should have let you go. He wrapped her in blankets, lifted her into his arms, and carried her outside. She was so light, he felt like he could break her just by holding her too tight. What kind of woman walks through a Montana blizzard at midnight and knocks on a stranger's door without saying a single word? Grant McCoy asked himself that the moment he heard the sound. He placed her on the horse and secured her gently. She drifted in and out of consciousness as he rode. Just hold on, he whispered against her hair. Hold on, Nora. They reached town the next day. People stared as Grant rode down the main street carrying the blind woman they had turned their backs on. Warren Kent stepped out of the bank. McCoy, he barked. What are you doing? Grant ignored him and dismounted, lifting Nora carefully into his arms. He faced the crowd, voice rough with anger and fear. She's sick because I sent her away, because I was weak, because I listened to cowards. Whispers spread, faces softened. Others looked ashamed. Preacher Hewitt stepped forward, eyes wide. Lord have mercy. Grant's voice rose. Judge her if you want. Judge me too. But I'll tell you this. That woman has more courage blind than most men, here with perfect sight. She's staying. With me. What kind of woman walks through a Montana blizzard at midnight and knocks on a stranger's door without saying a single word? Grant McCoy asked himself that the moment he heard the sound. As family. Silence fell, heavy, thick. Then Martha Doyle stepped forward. "I stand with Grant." One by one others followed. Jed Murphy stepped beside Grant, shame in his eyes. "Grant, I was wrong." Warren Kent stood alone as the town silently shifted away from him, his face twisted. But he said nothing as he turned and walked off. Grant carried Nora to Martha's house, where the women tended to her with warm cloths, broth, and whispered prayers. Grant waited outside the door for 3 long days, pacing the porch, unable to eat or sleep. Finally, Martha opened the door. "She's awake." Grant rushed inside. Nora lay covered in quilts, her face pale but peaceful. She turned her head when she heard his footsteps. "You came back," she whispered. Grant knelt beside her bed, voice breaking. "I'm so sorry, please forgive me." Nora reached out. Her hand found his cheek. What kind of woman walks through a Montana blizzard at midnight and knocks on a stranger's door without saying a single word? Grant McCoy asked himself that the moment he heard the sound. There's nothing to forgive. "You're here now." Grant leaned into her touch, eyes closing as relief washed over him. For the first time in years, he let himself cry. 6 weeks later, life bloomed again. The cabin no longer felt cold. Rows of young plants sprouted in the garden. Chickens scratched in the yard. Tommy read scriptures out loud. Lillian braided flowers into Nora's hair. Grant repaired the fence while listening to Nora hum a soft melody inside the house. When evening came, they all sat on the porch. The sky turned gold, then pink, then deep blue. The mountains glowed in the last light of day. Grant described every color, every shape, every cloud. Nora tilted her head, imagining all of it. "It sounds beautiful," she said. "It is," Grant replied softly. "You are." Nora's breath caught. Her hand found his. Their fingers intertwined. "Will you stay?" Grant asked gently. What kind of woman walks through a Montana blizzard at midnight and knocks on a stranger's door without saying a single word? Grant McCoy asked himself that the moment he heard the sound. Not as hired help, as family, with us. Nora turned toward him, eyes shining. "I'm already home, Grant." He pulled her close, holding her with a tenderness that felt like a promise. Inside, the table was set for 4, wildflowers in a jar. The Bible opened to the verse she read the first night she saved his heart. The candle she always lit now burned for all of them. Grant, Tommy, Lillian, and herself. Outside, the last snow melted from the mountains, revealing green fields full of new beginnings. Grant McCoy sat with the woman he had nearly lost and the children who needed both of them. And for the first time in years, he felt whole. Their second chance had finally come.